Hello, class. So today we're going to be looking at Zora Neale Hurston's short story, Sweat. And it tells one woman's story about how she dealt with an abusive husband and how things kind of came around in her favor. But before we do that, I wanted to take a look at, again, some of our values and beliefs of the Harlem Renaissance, because some of you seem to be struggling a little bit with how Zora Neale Hurston embraced the ideas of the Harlem Renaissance and how she was kind of her own person. So let's kind of take a look at this. So I highlighted some of the ones that I thought were the most important, and they were challenging stereotypes of African Americans, and certainly, she did that. She had a sense of culture and connection to the African roots, and we saw that she felt this, certainly her appreciation for jazz music, and then she also expressed herself and her feelings throughout the essay. She expresses how she feels. She also ties into this idea that everyone has a story to tell. Where things get a little bit different, though, for her is expressing the impact of slavery and racism in their lives. She really kind of challenged this, especially when she talked about how slavery did not negatively impact her, and also her ideas about fighting against racism and oppression. She doesn't really do that. In fact, she said that she is not put upon. She, for her, slavery was like a race. Gave her the chance. She's moving forward. And for her, this idea about trying to live and survive in a racist America, she's kind of like, I think you could argue she's almost on the fence. I mean, she is trying to deal with it, but she doesn't see it as a hardship. One of the things for her that definitely she does embrace is this idea about being yourself. Now, she doesn't really focus solely on race, but she is someone who is herself. She also reaches towards the future and practices self-determination. She definitely is her own person. She's not going to let anything hold her back. She's just going to go for it. One way that she's also her own person is she doesn't see Northern white people as someone to be afraid of or someone to worry about. For her, they were just people that passed through town. But the question that I would ask is this really how she feels, or is she also wearing a mask? And, again, we don't know, but I think you could argue either of those very well. All right, so we're going to take a look. Now, in the Google Classroom, I've included both a clean copy, the whole story, but I've also included part one with my annotations. Now, she wrote in dialect, which some people criticized her for, but she really felt that it was important to write that way. She wanted to write the way that people spoke. Let's see if I can make this a little bit big. Oh, there we go. And so what I did is I scanned it in, and these are my notes if you want those instead. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. She does use the N-word. I will obviously not be saying that. But one of the things that I've done is I've tried to highlight things that deal with her are in green, and things that kind of deal with Sykes are in this like pinky purple color. Anyway, let's go ahead and we'll take a look. It was 11 o'clock of a spring night in Florida. It was Sunday. Any other night, Delia Jones would have been in bed for 2 hours by this time, but she was a washwoman, and Monday morning meant a great deal to her. So she collected the soiled clothes on Saturday when she returned the clean things. Sunday night after church, she sorted them and put the white things to soak. It saved her almost half a day's start. A great hamper in the bedroom held the clothes that she brought home. It was so much neater than a number of bundles lying around. She squatted in the kitchen floor beside the great pile of clothes, sorting them into small heaps according to color and humming a song in a mournful key, but wondering through it all where Sykes, her husband, had gone with her horse and buckboard. And a buckboard is a type of wagon. Just then, something long, round, limp, and black fell upon her shoulders and slithered to the floor beside her. A great terror took hold of her. It softened her knees and dried her mouth so that it was a full minute before she could cry out or move. Then she saw that it was the big bullwhip her husband liked to carry when he drove. She lifted her eyes to the door and saw him standing there, bent over with laughter at her fright. She screamed at him, "Sykes, what you throw that whip on me like that? You know it would scare me. It looks just like a snake, and you know how scared of snakes I is." "Of course I know that. That's how come I done it." He slapped his leg with his hand and almost rolled on the ground in his mirth. "If you such a big fool that you got to have a fit over a earthworm or a string, I don't care how bad I scare you." And so something to ask yourself is, what do we learn about Sykes here? Like, he knows that she's afraid of snakes, and he scares her with it anyway, and he thinks it's funny and says, "I don't care." "You ain't got no business doing it. God knows it's a sin. Someday I'm going to drop dead from some of your foolishness. Another thing, where you been with my rig?
I feeds that pony. He ain't for you to be driving with no bullwhip. You sure is one aggravating woman, he declared, and stepped into the room. She resumed her work and did not answer him at once. I done told you time and again to keep them white folks close out of this house. He picked up the whip and glared down at her. Delia went on with her work. She went out into the yard and returned with a galvanized tub and set it on the wash bench. She saw that Sykes had kicked all of the clothes together again and now stood in her way truculently, his whole manner hoping, praying for an argument. But she walked calmly around him and commenced to resort the things. Next time, I'm going to kick him outdoors, he threatened as he struck a match along the leg of his corduroy breeches. Delia never looked up from her work, and her thin, stooped shoulders sagged further. I ain't for no fuss tonight, Sykes. I just come from taking sacrament at the church house. So one of the things that you begin to see that the way that this isn't their first fight, and the way that she kind of deals with it is she just ignores him, and her shoulders start to, stoop. She's kind of put up with it and put up with it and put up with it. And she's just kind of saying, look, dude, I'm not in the mood tonight. We also see that she's a religious woman, but she is someone who has been beaten on more than one occasion. He snorted scornfully. Yeah, you just come from the church house on a Sunday night, but here you is going to work on them clothes. You ain't nothing but a hypocrite. One of them amen corner Christians. Sing, whoop, and shout, and then come home and wash white folks' clothes on the Sabbath. He stepped roughly upon the whitest pile of things, kicking them helter-skelter as he crossed the room. His wife gave a little scream of despair and quickly gathered them together again. Sykes, you quit grinding dirt onto these clothes. How can I get them through by Saturday if I don't start on Sunday? I don't care if you never get through. Anyhow, I done promised God and a couple other men I ain't gonna have it in my house. Don't give me no lip neither, else I'll throw 'em out and put my fist upside your head to boot. Now here's where we see a big change in Delia. Delia's habitual meekness seemed to slip from her shoulders like a blown scarf. She was on her feet, her poor little body, her bare knuckly hands bravely defying the strapping hulk before her. Look at here, Sykes, you done gone too far. I've been married to you for 15 years, and I've been taking and washing for 15 years. Sweat, sweat, sweat. Working sweat, crying sweat, praying sweat. What's that got to do with me? He asked brutally. What's it got to do with you, Sykes? My tub of suds is filled your belly with victuals more time than your hands has filled it. My sweat is done paid for this house, and I reckon I can keep on sweating in it. So we begin to see that she's actually the one who's paid for the house, and she's actually the one that's fed him. She's saying, basically, you haven't brought enough money to even feed yourself. She seized the iron skillet from the stove and struck a defensive pose, which act surprised him greatly coming from her. It cowed him, and he did not strike her as he usually did. No, you won't, she panted. That old snaggle-toothed black woman you running with ain't coming here to pile up on my sweat and blood. You ain't paid for nothing on this place, and I'm going to stay here, right here, till I'm toted out foot foremost. Well, you better quit getting me riled up, or else I'll be toting you out sooner than you expect. I'm so tired of you, I don't know what to do. God, how I hate skinny women. So we begin to see not only that, but he's cheating on her, and she knows that he's cheating on her. And it's not the first time. A little awed by this new Delia, he sidled out of the door and slammed the back gate after him. He did not say where he had gone, but she knew too well. She knew very well that he would not return until nearly daybreak also. Her work over, she went on to bed, but not to sleep at once. Things had come to a pretty pass. She lay awake, gazing upon the debris that cluttered their matrimonial trail. Not an image left standing along the way. Anything like flowers had long ago been drowned in the salty stream that had been pressed from her heart. So here the flowers are like her good feelings, her good memories, and the salty stream are all the bad things that happened, or all the tears that she's cried. Her tears, her sweat, her blood. She had brought love to the union, and he had brought a longing after the flesh. 2 months after the wedding, he had given her the first brutal beating. She had the memory of his numerous trips to Orlando with all of his wages when he had returned to her penniless, even before their first year had passed. She was young and soft then, but now she thought of her knotty muscled limbs, her harsh knuckly hands, and drew herself into an unhappy little ball in the middle of the big feather bed. Too late now to hope for love. Even if there were not Bertha, it would be someone else. This case differed from the others, only in that she was bolder than the others. Too late for everything except her little home. So we see here that she loved him, but he just, desired her.
She had built it for her old days and planted one by one the trees and flowers there. It was lovely to her, lovely. Somehow before sleep came, she found herself saying aloud, "Oh well, whatever goes over the devil's back has got to come under his belly. Something or other, Sykes, like everybody else, is going to reap his sowing." After that, she was able to build a spiritual earthworks against her husband. His shells could no longer reach her. Amen. She went to sleep and slept until he announced his presence in bed by kicking her feet and rudely snatching the cover away.
Give me some cover here and get your damn foots over on your own side. I ought to mash you in your mouth for drawing that skillet on me.
Delia went clear to the rail without answering him, a triumphant indifference to all that he was or did. So we begin to see that she no longer cares about him. And so that's kind of what gives her the triumph. Like if she was angry or hurt, then he still has power over her. But when someone is indifferent, that means they don't care about you at all. So in this next section, we're going to see what some men that we call like porch talking men. And I want you to think about what is their role in the story. One of the things that they do is they offer some kind of comic relief, but there's also another element. And one of the things to think about is how they kind of pass judgment on Sykes, and they kind of give us some background information. So they serve a couple of different purposes. They give us some background information. There's a little bit of comic relief, and they kind of pass judgment on Sykes and give us some understanding of how they feel about him. But notice that although they know what's going on, none of them step in to get involved. The week was as full of work for Delia as all other weeks, and Saturday found her behind her little pony collecting and delivering clothes. It was a hot, hot day near the end of July. So we know that several months had passed because when the story opened, it was the spring. The village men on Joe Clark's porch even chewed cane listlessly. They did not hurl the cane knots as usual. They let them dribble over the edge of the porch. Even conversation had collapsed under the heat. So what they're doing is they're chewing sugar cane because it's very sweet, and they're just kind of like chewing it until all the sugar is gone. "Here come Delia Jones," Jim Merchant said as a shaggy pony came around the bend of the road between them. The rusty buckboard was heaped with baskets of crisp, clean laundry. "Yep," Joe Lindsay agreed. "Hot or cold, rain or shine, just as regular as the weeks roll round, Delia carries them and fetches them on Saturday." "She better if she wants to eat," said Moss. "Sykes Jones ain't worth the shot and powder it would take to kill him. Not to her, he ain't." "He sure ain't," Walter Thomas chimed in. "It's too bad, too, 'cause she was a right pretty little trick when he got her. I'd have married her myself if he hadn't beat me to it." Delia nodded briefly at the men as she drove past. "Too much knocking will ruin any woman. He done beat her enough to kill 3 women, let alone change their looks," said Elijah Mosley. "How Sykes can stomach that big, black, greasy mogul he's laying around with gets me. I swear that 8-Rock couldn't kiss a sardine can I done throwed out the back door way last year." So they definitely don't like Bertha, the woman that he's with now. "Ah, she's fat. That's how come. He always been crazy about fat women," put in Merchant. "He'd have been tied up with one long time ago if he could have found one to have him. Did I tell you about him come sidling around my wife, bringing her a basket of pecans out of his yard for a present? Yes, sir, my wife. She told him to take them right straight back home, 'cause Delia worked so hard over that wash tub, she reckoned everything on the place. Tastes like sweat and soap suds. I just wish I'd have caught him round here. I'd have made his hips catch on fire down that shell road." Basically saying he would have shot him. "I know he done it too. I sees him a-grinning at every woman that passes," Walter Thomas said. "But even so, he used to eat some mighty big hunks of humble pie to get that little old woman he got. She was pretty as a speckled pup. That was 15 years ago. He used to be so scared of losing her, she could have make him do some parts of a husband's duty. They never was the same in the mind." And what he's meaning here is that they were not the same people. Like they wanted different things. He was afraid that he was going to lose her, and she was really cute, but they weren't a good match.
"There ought to be a law about him," said Lindsay. "He ain't fit to carry guts to a bear."
Clark spoke for the first time.
"'Tain't no law on earth that can make a man be decent if it ain't in him. There's plenty men that takes a wife like they do a joint of sugar cane. It's round, juicy, and sweet when they gets it, but they squeeze and grind, and wring till they wring every drop of pleasure that's in them out. When they satisfied that they is wrung dry, they treats them just like they do a cane chew. They throws them away. They knows what they is doing while they's at it and hates themselves for it, but they keep on hanging after her till she's empty. Then they hates her for being a cane shoe and in the way. We ought to take Sykes and that stray woman of his down in the Lake Howell swamp and lay on the rawhide till they can't say Lord of mercy. He always was an overbearing person, but since that white woman from up north done teached him how to run an automobile, he done got too bigoted to live, and we ought to kill him, old man Anderson advised. So notice here how the reason they want to kill him is not, I mean, part of it's to do with how he treats his wife, but part of it's just he's too bigoted. He acts too big for his britches. A grunt of approval went around the porch, but the heat was melting their civic virtue, and Elijah Mosey began to bait Joe Clark. Come on, Joe, a watermelon is just what I need to cure the epidemics. Walter Thomas joined forces with Mosley. Come on, Dad, Joe, we all is steady customers, and you ain't set us up in a long time. I chooses that long, bow-legged Florida favorite. I gotta be dog. Y'all give me 20 cents and slice away, Clark retorted. I needs a cold slice myself. Here, everybody chip in, and I'll lend you my meat knife. The money was quickly subscribed, and the men and the huge melon brought forth. At that moment, Sykes and Bertha arrived. A determined silence fell on the porch, and the melon was put away again. Merchant snapped down the blade of his jackknife and moved toward the store door. Come on in, Joe, and give me a slab of sow belly and a pound of coffee. Almost forgot 'twas Saturday. Got to get on home. Most of the men left also. Just then, Delia drove past on her way home, as Sykes was ordering magnificently for Bertha. It pleased him for Delia to see. Get whatsoever your heart desires, honey. Wait a minute, Joe. Give her 2 bottles of strawberry soda water, a quart of parched ground peas, and a block of chewing gum. With all this, they left the store with Sykes reminding Bertha that this was his town and she could have it if she wanted it. The men returned soon after they left and held their watermelon feast. Where did Sykes Jones get that woman from nohow? Lindsay asked. Over Apapolka. Guess they must have been cleaning out the town when she left. She don't look like a thing but a hunk of liver with hair on it. Well, she sure can squall, David Carter contributed. When she gets ready to laugh, she just opens her mouth and latches it back to the last notch. No old Grandpa Alligator down in Lake Bell ain't got nothing on her. Bertha had been in town 3 months now. Sykes was still paying her room rent at Della Lewis's, the only house in town that would have taken her in. Sykes took her frequently to Winter Park to stomps. He assured her that he was the swellest man in the state. Sure, you can have that little old house soon as I get that woman out of there. Everything belongs to me, and you sure can have it. I sure abominates a skinny woman. Lottie, you sure has got one portly shape on you. You can get anything you want. This is my town, and you sure can have it. Delia's work-worn knees crawled over the earth in Gethsemane and up the rocks of Calvary many, many times during these months. She avoided the villagers and meeting places in her efforts to be blind and deaf. But Bertha nullified this to agree by coming to Delia's house to call Sykes out to her at the gate. So this Bertha is so forward that she goes to Delia's house that she paid for and bought and calls out to her husband. Delia and Sykes fought all the time now with no peaceful interludes. They slept and ate in silence. 2 or 3 times Delia had attempted a timid friendliness, but she was repulsed each time. It was plain that the breaches must remain agape. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop. The next week we're going to finish reading this, but we begin to see that Delia is kind of having a hard time of it. Your homework is going to be to answer these questions. The first thing that you're going to do is make a copy of this document. Then when you get your copy, you're going to type your answers here, and you're going to submit your copy in Google Classroom. You're going to use text evidence from the story to support your answer. Please note that there are 7 questions. They're short, but this is also a gentle reminder that if you have used some kind of a screen name that's not your actual name, I need you to please change it to your name. You go into the settings and go ahead and do that. But that's all that I have for this week. And I hope you guys are having a fantastic time. Thank you for coming. And that will be everything. Thank you.